It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue. Get over to Joe's Karting today, indoor karting facility. And man, the way the weather has been this week, I wouldn't mind if they peel that roof off for just a couple of days and then smack it back on top when it chills out here in the next couple of weeks. But what a beautiful facility. What a great time it is going over to Joe's Karting.
At least a skylight.
Yeah, there we go. Save on the power bill. Future improvements we can help out Joe's Karting with. But they're the title sponsor of the show as always, and we do appreciate everything Joe's Karting does for the front stretch.
If we're gonna help them out, we better get a lot better at this.
That's a good point. Today's show preview, turns 1 and 2. We're going to recap Homestead, talk about some of the post-race conversation, talk about some of the complaining that some of the drivers have done. I know. It's shocking.
What another boring race.
Yeah, it's shocking that drivers complained about something, but we're going to talk a little bit about that and kind of our overview thoughts on how the season went. Turn number 3, we're going to sit down with Landon Cassill, driver of the number 34 Loves Travel Stops, a Ford Fusion, formerly at Front Row Motorsports. As of last Sunday at Homestead when the checkered flag waved, his contract with Front Row Motorsports expired, and he is not going to be returning, so we'll find out what he is planning on for 2018. And then at turn number 4, we're going to announce the 2017-2018 Legends of the Dirt Series for this year, which kick off next weekend, so we'll talk more about that. All right, recap from Homestead. Dirk, and first off, I think we should kick things off by saying, wow, what a great time at Quaker Steak and Lube.
Oh, we had a blast. Great turnout. A huge cheer for the 78 when he crossed the finish line in front of the 18.
I honestly wasn't expecting that, but I'm glad that it happened. It caught me a little off guard.
I mean, the whole room did it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a Harvick fan here or there, but I think it was an anybody but Kyle Busch fan base. That's what I think we had.
Agreed.
And I think, like I said, just about anybody else, I think everybody probably would have been tickled if Kyle Larson would have been able to come back and get through the crowd after, because everybody was cheering when he went through the first 2 phases. I know me personally, I had $50 pool with Mr. Larson. So
that's why you were pushing so hard for him. Yeah, several people won cash prizes because they got in on the pools, which we will do that stuff again at Daytona, which is the reason why you should always show up before the green flag waves. You could drop $5. Sometimes we do the bigger pools of $10.
Depends
you
how much.
Win $50 or $100 cash if you pick the correct starting number.
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, it's literally a pool. You don't know your number until afterwards, and then you scrape it off. And since those pools are only done with 10 numbers, 0 through 9 or 1 through 10, however you do it, you get the 4 drivers that start with that starting position, as in if you do draw the 1, you get 1, 11, 21, and 31. If you draw the 6, you get 6, 16, 26, and 36.
Right.
Like last year for the February one, I won one of the Daytona pools. Kurt Busch, I believe, was like at the 14th spot or something. So, and if you pick 40 and you got the 40 and it happens to be Jimmy Johnson, you got about a 1 in 5 shot of getting that bad boy done.
We're like 84 days away from the Daytona 500.
Oh, I'm already hurting.
We're already working on the Daytona 500 party. So
I got withdrawal symptoms.
Get ready
already.
to go.
Just ended yesterday.
Homestead, when the flag dropped and the race got going, early on, I had suspicions, and I think I told about anybody who would listen. I was really worried that the pressure would get to Martin Truex Jr., that 78 team. I don't think they've had to deal with much pressure all year long because they performed so well, and they've basically, since about midway through the season when everybody else realized, oh my God, look at all of these playoff points that they've racked up, they're going to be a shoo-in for at least the round of 8, and then it kept going, okay, now they're in for the round of 14, or the round of 4, the championship round. But I really kind of felt like it all coming down to one race, that the pressure was going to get to them, and it looked early on like it did. Martin was complaining about the handling of his car. The front was into the track too much. The back was out of the track too much, had no rear-end grip, had too much front-end digging in.
And the car was absolutely fine. He was just saying that to mess with you.
Yeah, even though, compared to the playoff 4 at times, and that isn't really, it's no wonder, but he was running fourth for quite a while there in, I want to say, the early part of the stage, maybe through about 30% of the race to about 50% of the race. Right there at about the halfway point after that second stage stop was when they started to get the handle of that car, and he was able to start making some hay out of it.
Well, in that final stage, when that group of pit stops was going through, and he was one of the first ones to pit, and Kyle Busch was leading and was hanging back and, ran the full tank of gas out, ran the whole fuel run, hoping to get a yellow. But they were 3 or 4 mile an hour slower per lap on the old tires, and they lost so much ground by the time everything cycled out. Truex was in the lead, and Kyle Busch was back. Him and Kyle Larson were like 5th, 6th, and 7th, something like that, but several seconds behind. And then the caution came out, after 15 laps, and now everybody, their new tires were no good anymore.
Right.
So that was kind of the big telltale, and I think the only person that I saw that had any type of choking all day was Mr. Busch when he about ran into the pit road wall trying to enter pit road.
Yeah, that was crazy. And because of everything that was going on at Quaker Steak, I didn't get to see exactly what happened there. But do you know if you went back and watched it, that if it was a late call to get on pit road, or was that just a mistake?
Well, we didn't have any sounds, so I don't know what they said, but he was having trouble. There was, might have been Blaney that he was trying to get around.
That's right. It was the 21 on his inside.
And then
but what
Blaney,
a near miss. I mean,
instead of just following Blaney into the pits, he was trying to get around him, and it about cost him big.
That harkens back to the year that his brother won the championship when he was coming out of turn 4 and the tire came off the car, and he was able to jerk that car onto pit road and get it stopped and get serviced, saved himself a championship, and Kyle almost did it there too. As the laps were winding down, it looked like it was going to be a battle between Kyle and Martin Truex Jr., and the way Kyle caught Martin with about 15 to go, 14 to go, somewhere in that area, I really thought that it was all over with for Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah, and we talked, did he use everything up, which was something that we talked about, because we were also talking about Kyle Larson was flying, and he'd come from 6th or 7th place up into 3rd, and he actually got on Busch's back bumper one time.
And I think that's the reason why Kyle Larson didn't win the race. I think after he made contact with Kyle Busch, he his eyes opened up a little bit and he went, whoa, I don't want to wreck one of the championship drivers. Finishing 3rd is better than what I've finished the last 4 races. Let's just chill.
Well, he got into the wall one time there about the same time, when they all got up there. So 12, 15 laps to go. He got into the wall once, and I think that did something to him, maybe to the car, maybe he says, my tires are shot. I can't go any further, because he ran there 6 inches off the wall 90% of the day.
I think that's giving it some space. There wasn't much room off that wall. Holy cow, was he 6 inches, I think, is generous. I think there was more like 2 or 3 at times, but there was most of the time. But yeah, you're right. He was right up on it.
I mean, the last 15 laps were as good a racing as what there's been all year. It would have been nicer, if maybe, because Kyle was searching for a place where Martin wasn't. Martin was up on that, and he was about a lane off where Kyle Larson was running. But he was still way up on the track, and Kyle went through the middle, he went through the bottom, he went back in the middle, and he was searching for some place where he could, where Martin Truex wasn't.
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of times once Kyle caught him that Martin basically took his line away, which is that's what you got to do as the leader. You've got that clean air, so you got the advantage, but you also need to make sure that the guy that's trying to catch you has dirty air, and the best way to do it is to just stay right in front of him so that Kyle can't get enough downforce on that car and drive harder into the corner. Martin drove a masterful race, and he drove a masterful season. I don't think there was anybody that was a more fitting champion. Martin Truex Jr. ends up winning the race. Kyle Busch comes home 2nd. Kevin Harvick, your other playoff contender, finished 4th, and Brad Keselowski finished 7th. Most of the playoff contenders were right up front most of the day. I think all of them led at one point in time. Well, I thought Kevin was really going to give Martin Truex Jr. a run for his money when Kevin was able to pass him on green flag laps.
Well, and for a long time, Kyle Larson basically led the first 2 stages. And Kyle looked like, basically that he had the car to beat. He was tracking on that high side, and we've been talking about it for 3 months.
Yeah.
When they get to Homestead, Kyle's going up next to the wall and going to run around the track, And it bit him right at the end, but their pit stops were good, and that was something we talked about a week ago that never happened. It never showed up with a pit stop penalty or anything, Of course, we didn't hear sound, so we don't know if maybe there was a pit road penalty on somebody in the middle of the pack or whatever.
Well, and the only championship drivers that had pit road issues we talked about earlier was Kyle Busch getting onto pit road, but he was able to recover from that slight mistake. And, it slowed him down on the track about a couple of seconds, but other than that, he was able to recover pretty easily.
But we were talking about the 4 playoff guys, running towards the front. For most of the first and second stage, Kyle Larson led, and the other 4 guys were in some form of second, third, fourth, and fifth.
Yeah, they were all right there together, weren't they?
They were in a bunch the whole time. Now, there was several times where first and second were 2 seconds apart, and second to third was 10 or 12 seconds a couple times. I mean, they really got spread out for a while. But once they got down to business and everybody says, okay, it's go time. And, I mean, who knows where Martin Truex would have done if there was playoff points on the line. He might have tried to win a stage.
Yeah.
I got a kick out of it yesterday when I was driving home. When I left last night, I was going, the last 3 races, the guy couldn't get to the front. But this race, it mattered, so he did. I wondered how much possum he was playing those last 3 races.
Well, and they were talking about, Cole Pearn was talking in his post-race that they have been preparing for this race for a long time. They knew going into this season that Homestead was their weak point, and everyone knows it. I mean, it's the great thing about what I like about this playoff system is that it's much more in line with stick and ball playoff sports, to where an undefeated team can walk into the Super Bowl and get beat by a 10-6 team because they simply just got outplayed in one game, and that's what it all comes down to. So anybody that complains about this playoff system, it's not like the old system where you can build up a massive lead going into the last couple of races, and I like that because now we've got suspense in the last race. We've got that was probably one of the best races of the year. Not racing-wise, but suspense-wise, because you knew what was on the line if Kyle could get to Martin those last couple of laps.
There was so much yelling and stuff there at Quaker State.
Yeah.
Those last 15 laps, people were rooting for Kyle Larson to get past Kyle Busch, and they were rooting for Kyle Busch not to get anywhere near Martin Truex, even though he got a couple car links behind him a couple times. And, there was never anything outside of Kyle Larson having that one big run out of 2 and getting into the back of Kyle Busch a little bit. There was no real dirty driving. That I could see. Kyle was complaining that Joey Logano kept blocking him when he was trying to get by him coming up through there at the end. And, he said, I just took way too long, messing with him. And he goes, I guess I got a real buddy there. Well, I mean, you just dumped him at Martinsville a few races ago.
I think he knows he doesn't have a buddy, and he was just pointing that out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a little sarcasm there.
So, again, Martin Truex Jr. gets the win. 8 wins on the year.
Led the most laps, won the most races. Kyle Busch was second in most wins, second in laps led, and then they finished 1-2 in the title. Pretty fitting year.
I agree. While I was hoping, the fan in me wanted Kevin Harvick. My heart was telling me Kyle Busch was going to win it, but I'm so happy that Martin Truex Jr. won it, because that would have been known as one of the biggest failures of all year if Martin Truex Jr. wasn't able to get it done. And thankfully for that 78 team, and a great storyline that they were able to get it done, and what a great post-race, all for that 2-3 hours afterwards of coverage on NBCSN. Them just talking about how great of a story it is, that the fight that, I mean, what a better story with Martin Truex Jr. He's been down and out twice. He's been released from top-tier teams for reasons that are outside of his control, and then the whole Michael Waltrip Racing thing, and he finds his way to this single-team operation that is a Chevy at the time. Him and Cole Pearn team up together, and they work well together, and then they switch over to Toyotas, and really you could make the argument that for that 78 team made Toyota better this year with some of the information they were sending back to Joe Gibbs Racing.
Absolutely. I also liked in the interviews afterwards where he went all the way back to his roots at Wall Stadium there in New Jersey. We're
going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 2. We're going to talk about our thoughts on the 2017 season, some of the storylines that have come out in just the 24 hours after the race happened. I know it's been a week, but we recorded on Monday because of the holiday this week, and so we could sit down with Landon Cassill, who, by the way, is coming up in turn number 3. And then at turn number 4, we're going to announce the Legends of the Dirt series for the next, 13, 14 shows. We're coming back here on the front stretch.
We all have that coworker that runs their mouth off at how great they are. They shot a 5 under par, 95-mile-an-hour fastball, bench press 375, brah. Wouldn't you love to shut them up by schooling them at Joe's Karting? Council Bluffs' premier indoor karting track, professionally designed so each corner is your opportunity to embarrass your coworker. Call Buddy for your next company outing at 712-256-5278. Joe's Karting, white knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue next to AMC 17.
This week's young gun of the front stretch is 16-year-old Dustin O'Brien Jr., who's watched nearly every one of his family members race at a dirt track all over the Midwest. In 2013, Dustin started his racing career off by driving a dirt kart for a season. He then purchased a sport compact where he racked up a few heat race wins and qualified for the 2016 Boone Super Nationals feature where he finished 10th. After 2 seasons behind the wheel of a sport compact, Dustin purchased a hobby stock for the 2017 season and competed weekly at Crawford County Speedway, Shelby County Speedway, and more. Dustin plans to race his hobby stock for the next few years with the goal of winning a track championship and winning a feature at the Boone Super Nationals before moving on to a stock car or a modified. Dustin wants to thank his mom and dad for all their support in his dirt racing career. Make sure to keep your eye out for the number 37 Austin Snyder Culver's Frozen Custard Whitrock Motors hobby stock driven by Dustin O'Brien Jr. at a dirt track near you. This week's Young Gun has been presented by Kosiski Auto Parts at 51st and I Street.
This is Andrew from Kosiski Auto Parts. Kosiski Auto Parts is an insurance quality used parts supplier that can match your foreign or domestic car or truck needs. If you have a damaged or broke down car or truck, we guarantee a clean and quality part in next day fashion. Kosiski Auto Parts, your neighborhood premium recycled parts supplier. Call any Kosiski Auto Parts salesman today by dialing 402-731-4592 or visit us at 5040 I Street in Omaha. Kosiski Auto Parts, our quality used parts will match your car or truck's needs.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Hey, I'm Joey Logano, driver number 22, Shell Penzo Ford, and you're listening to The Front Stretch.
Coming into turn number 2, just about ready to kick it along the backstretch, and time to recap some of the news and notes that have happened in the 2017 NASCAR season. Obviously, we talked about it in turn number 1. Martin Truex Jr. is your Cup Series champion, followed by Kyle Busch. Kevin Harvick finishes 4th with Brad Keselowski in the, Kevin Harvick in 3rd, Brad Keselowski in 4th. Chase Elliott is the best of the rest, finishing 5th. Denny Hamlin 6th, Matt Kenseth 7th. Kyle Larson, a playoff contender, strong, hopeful, and he was probably one of the top 2 favorite drivers going into the playoffs, ends up finishing 8th. Ryan Blaney 9th, and Jimmy Johnson rounds out your top 10.
By the way, we did not give a shout-out to Chad Robb for stopping out and joining us yesterday.
Yes.
You know, it looked like he had a pretty good time, and he was, we talked a lot of fantasy stuff with him. I know there were some other people that talked to him, but yeah, he had a great time with us, I think. And
by the way, we've talked him into giving us a free membership to his NASCARFantasyTips.com. It's an annual membership, and we're going to give it to, if you agree with this is what I've come up with. The worst of the perfect attendance Pick'em's contestants.
Well, it's probably you.
No, actually it isn't, because I missed a race. But I should get it anyways.
I think if you sweet talk Chad, you'd get one anyway.
Maybe. We'll just have to keep it between him and I so that nobody else knows that I'm getting tips from him. But Mr. Fantasy, a great source of information is Chad Robb's website, Mr. Fantasy. I think it's NASCARRacingTips.com.
Well, he did show me yesterday because he had his laptop with him, and he opened it up, and he is, I don't know how many people in the overall do Fox Sports.
I think he said over 300,000.
And he was like 236th.
Yeah.
Ahead of 99.9% of the people.
So I don't remember which, because he was talking about 2 different pools. One of them had 2.3 million people in it, and he was in the 200s. He was 99.9. He was beating 99.9% of the other people. And then the other pool, there was like 300,000, and he was sitting 26th. And he was looking to win money in both pools. So his tips and tricks do pan out on the season long. You look at it in a very short window, and you go, you missed one there, you missed one there. Well, that's fantasy sports. Sometimes you just miss them.
Yeah, I mean, crashes and stuff like that happen that are unforeseen, but sometimes those are on your plus side too.
So talking about a couple of news and notes, right after the race was over with, we heard a couple of conversations that I wanted to talk about. Kyle Busch talking about not being able to get around the 22 of Joey Logano. The reason why I want to talk about it is because of the same reason that happened on Saturday night with Elliott Sadler not being able to get by the 18 of Ryan Priece and having a big fit about it for the next couple of days. And it drums up the conversation again. This is a very unique sport where the ones going for the championship are still fighting against those who aren't going for the championship. And there's this delicate balance that I know that I've heard that NASCAR often has conversations with all the other cars in the field of do not affect the championship picture at the Homestead race. Please do not affect it. And they're asking them to not race the championship drivers so hard that there's a wreck and takes one of them out. They're asking that they don't, if they're a lap down, to get the heck out of the way. How many times did we see lap down cars that were, they're near the inside guardrail at Homestead while the leaders are going by. And
they don't tell them to get the heck out of the way. They tell them to hold their line.
Yeah.
If they're running 2 lanes off the bottom, kind of through the middle of the track, to just stay there.
Yeah.
Let the leader see where you're at as he's coming up on you and go around you.
Yeah. And they oftentimes make those. So then the situation happened on Saturday night where Elliott Sadler was running down William Byron, and he legitimately was running him down. And Ryan Priece was battling for position. So if my memory serves me right, William Byron ended up getting by him for second place. Then Ryan Priece fell to third with Elliott Sadler in fourth. And no, I take that back. It was third, fourth, and fifth because the 22 of Sam Hornish Jr. was in second place. And this factors into the conversation a little bit later. As Byron gets by, Elliott tries to get by Priece in the corner, and Elliott dives down to the inside. And as we've seen all weekend long, that high side gets such a momentum run off the corner. If you're not able to clear on the low side, if you're not able to slide up and clear him in the corner, he's going to get by you again, and you're going to have to continue to battle. That was Elliott Sadler's gripe, was he said that Ryan Priece should have lifted and let him get by him in the corner, and I completely disagree. That's not the kind of NASCAR I want to see. Like you and I had kind of talked about at the Homestead viewing party, to be the champion, you got to earn it, and that means every position.
Exactly. Yeah, William Byron got by him.
Yeah.
He didn't expect him to pull over and let him go by. He went around him just like Elliott Sadler should have gone around him, and he just picked the wrong spot to do it.
It's the conversation we've talked about with the World of Outlaws, with sprint car racing, with late model racing, local dirt track racing. Lap traffic is a factor in the race that you have to figure out when to catch them and pass them. You really have to start looking farther ahead than just 10 feet off your nose. You have to start seeing as they're coming, I want to make sure and catch them just as we're coming out of the corner so I can get that momentum and get past them. So in order to do that, you might lift a little bit earlier to slow your momentum down and get by them at the right time. That will save you more time than catching them, killing your momentum, and then trying to figure out the ways to get around him. And I think Elliott Sadler just goofed it and understandably upset because he lost the championship because of that. I don't have any issue with it with Ryan Priece, though.
Well, I don't either. And, what Elliott Sadler needed to do is go and look in the mirror and say, hey, pal, you screwed up.
Yeah.
You just let one slip away.
And he talked about in the post-race, Elliott did, that I think he's finished second 4 out of the last 6 championship races, and he's sick and tired of finishing second. And, that's in another sense of the way that Elliott acted. He was very upset. There was almost a physical altercation after the race. That's the kind of stuff I love to see. I love Kyle Busch, how upset he was for finishing second in the race on Sunday for the Cup Series race and finishing second in the championship. I love how upset he was. I love how upset Elliott Sadler was, because that's the passion that we want back in this sport. We want these guys to be pushing as hard as they possibly can and not, well, it was a good points day for me. And circling back around to this, I've got no problem with the way Ryan Priece or Joey Logano raced those two guys.
Not at all.
Joey Logano didn't do it to
Joey Logano could have taken him out and he'd have been totally justified.
Absolutely. and Joey easily could have let him go, but like we talked about with the Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin situation, Kyle has never given that kind of graciousness to the 22 car.
To anybody.
True.
To anybody.
Not even his own mother has he given that to.
Oh,
but I've got no problem with it, because you're going to get raced the way you race everybody else. And the other hand of it is, Joey's racing for every position on the track. Just like at Martinsville, he's probably racing for his season. Maybe Todd Gordon is trying to finish the best he can for his job. I mean, after having the pitiful season that they have, I wouldn't be surprised to see if Todd Gordon's let go from the 22 machine.
Yeah, like I said, they're still representing a sponsor. He's still representing Penske. You think Penske's up there on the radio going, let him by, Joey. Yeah. Just let him by, Joey.
Let that Toyota, let that other organization go by and win. Yeah. I absolutely agree with you. And I believe it was Penske that ended up winning the Owners' Championship, right? Because I saw him up on the stage afterwards getting the trophy, and it was really cool that Rick Hendrick gave him the trophy.
I'm surprised that they won that with Toyota having 17 wins, but
Sorry about the confusion there. So Toyota did win the Monster Energy Cup Series Manufacturers Championship, which makes sense. 17 wins. The other teams
8 out of 10 in the chase. I mean, and that just proved Brad Keselowski was correct on what he was saying.
Well, but I don't necessarily agree with Brad, because I still, we always talked about this. When a driver complains about something, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And Toyota won 16.
Proof's in the pudding.
But Toyota won 16 races last year without this supposed body style advantage. So when they won 16 the year before, 17 the next year, I don't think he has that much to stand on.
Let's go back last year and give Martin Truex some luck. Toyota would have won 25 races.
Well, and that's the deciding factor. And by the way, Ford switched, or Stewart-Haas Racing switched to Ford, took a couple of wins with them, and Ford still didn't perform all that well. So I look at the hard stats with that understanding. I don't doubt that Brad's got a point, but I don't think that's the reason that Toyota had this dominance because of this aero package. I think Toyota just simply whooped everybody, and we've seen it before. I mean, Chevy
they whooped everybody because of the aero package. Plain and simple.
I don't think so. I think it was simply because they're on the top of their game. And maybe the aero package helped, but the stats don't back it up. They have similar stats to what they had last year, with a slightly different body style. So Brad's argument is that that they have a aero advantage because of a new body style they brought to Daytona, but it only equaled one more win for Toyota versus last year.
You got to go back and look where the wins came from. They didn't win a restrictor plate. Ford won them all.
So then it's not an aero advantage.
It is an aero advantage because the aero advantage on the restrictor plate track is a hindrance. On the 1.5 mile tracks where you've got to turn at high speed, at restrictor place, you put it on the floor and you just cruise around.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the interstate and cruise control.
Mm-hmm.
But at a 1.5 mile track, just look what they did at the 1.5 mile tracks. They just dominated. Martin dominated. It's another 1.5 mile win.
And I'll also make the argument that Martin Truex Jr. has been very strong for the last 3 years with Furniture Row Racing, and one of those years was with a Chevy. So if you take Martin Truex Jr. wins out of it, which is 8, and you divvy them up maybe a couple of Joe Gibbs and maybe a couple of Chevys and Fords here, I don't buy Brad's story that the only reason why or not the only, he didn't say the only reason, but he said dominance. And I don't think it's because of an aero advantage. I think it's because Toyota is just on their game. We've seen it with Chevy and Hendrick Motorsports and Stewart-Haas Racing. We've seen Fords do it, and
that's what Landon Cassill said. It comes and goes.
Right. So I think Brad's got a point, but I don't take it to the extent of its dominance. That the only reason why they won so many races was because of this aero advantage. I'll go back to saying that. Look at 2016's numbers. I didn't go back and look at 15 or 14, but looking at last year's numbers, they're not that different. So I offer up that as an argument to contradict his point. I don't think the 78 team is getting enough credit for what they have done, because not only did they get 8 wins as their team, but they also beat Joe Gibbs Racing several times out there. And they didn't beat him off strategy, and they didn't beat him off of trickery or pit road. They went out and whooped Joe Gibbs Racing just as much as they whooped the rest of the field. And it frustrates me. I've talked about this 100 times when a team is called a satellite team. It made me mad when they did it with Stewart-Haas Racing and Tony and Kevin's win when they were with Hendrick, when they had the alliance with Hendrick. And it does it with the 78 team in Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing, because I think it takes away from the things that the 78 team and Cole Pearn and Martin Truex Jr. are doing. I think it would be even. If Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. swapped cars, I think whoever won the previous time would still win, because the cars are similar, but they're tweaked a little bit different. But I think it comes down to what the 78 team is doing. They had their game right. They never made mistakes. I mean, think about it this year. The difference last year with Martin Truex Jr. winning a championship was all these fluke issues and penalties on pit road and little mistakes and bad luck. They didn't have it this year.
The dominance for him, 7 wins on 1.5 mile tracks.
Yeah.
That's just insane. That is insane.
Well,
Unheard of. It's a new record.
And I think that point that we're talking about is the dominance that team had. I mean, it's all year long. We've talked about it so many times. How strong they've been all year. We saw Kyle Busch and that 18 team come on late around race 20, race 22, 25. That's when they started coming on, and you kind of went, okay, maybe they're contending now. And we saw Kyle Larson was strong for a lot of the year, but then they fell off late. They had this dip in the middle of the season, and when the playoffs hit, they were good, they were strong, and then they just hit rock bottom with those last 4 of the last 5 races.
But you talk about, going back to the satellite point, Joe Gibbs has 4 teams, plus all the Xfinity teams, that they're getting data off. Obviously, Martin Truex data was probably pretty good in the Cup Series. Eric Jones, as a rookie, who knows exactly how good that data was, compared to what you're getting out of the 4 Gibbs cars. So all that data being shared back and forth. Whatever Cole Pern tweaked, he was the difference as far as I'm concerned.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk with Landon Cassill, former driver of the number 34 Love's Travel Stop Ford Fusion at Front Row Motorsport, Front Row Racing, and we say former because it was announced that he's no longer going to be with the team in 2018. So as of Sunday's Homestead race, he's no longer with that team. We're going to find out what Landon's going to be doing in the offseason and what he's working on, as many details as we can get from him for what he's working on for 2018. We'll be back here on the Front Stretch.
Have you ever watched NASCAR, dirt track, or IndyCar and thought, I could do that? Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs is the place to put your money where your mouth is. Races fire off every 10 minutes, so what are you waiting for? Get to Joe's Karting on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs, next to the Mid-America Center, and find out how easy it is to drive a race car. Each Joe's Karting car is powered by an eco-friendly Honda engine capable of a 14-second lap. That's if you're as good as you think.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things. Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the Front Stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the Front Stretch.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch. Heading into turn number 3, and it's time to sit down with a Monster Energy Cup Series driver, and that is the number 34 Love's Travel Shop Ford Fusion at Front Row Motorsports, driven by Landon Cassill, and a Cedar Rapids, Iowa native. Landon, good to have you back on the show, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We've had you on a couple of times. I think the most recent time we talked to you was maybe October last year at Kansas, or it might have been May, but I know it was down in Kansas City for the Kansas race that we sat down and talked to you, but you were only a dad for one time, so now you've doubled up on the diapers. How's that going?
It's going well. I'm actually sitting right in front of her. She's having a quick nap. It looks like so.
Oh, so we can't get too much out of control.
Always nice to have it's always nice to have a quiet baby.
Well,
I didn't know they existed.
Yeah, not too often.
I know she's only been around for about a month now. I think she was born about October 16th, right?
Yep. And baby Daphne. So we're pretty happy, and our 2.5-year-old Beckham has been a pretty good big brother so far. He's been very sweet to her.
We'll have to talk to you in a year to see how that relationship's going, because I always love talking to parents, especially since I'm pretty much just a cat owner, about the ways that how quickly the relationships will change and how stressed they'll become. So hopefully it's not too bad for you.
Of course.
You still down in Florida? You taking a little vacation after the season ended, or did you run home real quick?
Nope, came right home, and my in-laws are coming down for Thanksgiving. Which is nice because we usually go. We're usually out of town for Thanksgiving, so this will be our first one in a while where we actually stay home, and so that's an extra week through the holiday months that we don't have to travel. On top of the traveling that I already do. So,
and you know the best part about that, don't you?
What's that?
Leftovers.
Yep, exactly. So we're looking forward to staying home for Thanksgiving, and we kind of embrace the Christmas holiday in our house just because I travel so much with NASCAR that when we get home, our Christmas tree is up and our house is decorated and we're ready to just kind of enjoy the season. So
there you go.
we're enjoying it all, and we'll probably be back. I'll make it home to Iowa for Christmas.
And I got to imagine that, like you mentioned, with being on the road so much, that you've got to maximize the 90 days between Homestead and Daytona.
Exactly. Yeah. So it ends up being busier than you think. A lot of it because of the holidays, and the holiday season just seems to be demanding on everybody. It's a good kind of demanding, but we're always spending time with family or going to Christmas parties or whatever it may be, and so you just seem to be busy in a time of year that you wish you weren't. But it like I said, it's nice. And then January, it slows down in terms of the traveling. Home a little bit more in January, but that's when the preparations are a little bit heavier for the race season.
Well, the tough news that we heard and that was announced back in October is that you're not going to be returning to front row racing in that 34 car for 2018. So, I mean, how much of an off season do you get? You've probably got to start hitting the phone books and working on some deals for next year.
Yep, and that's what I've been working on. So, hopefully pretty soon we have some things lined up. There's a few scenarios out there for me. It's just kind of a matter of putting all the puzzle pieces together and figuring out what's the best deal for me to do. So, that's kind of the process that I'm going through right now. And, you just kind of, it's definitely a situation I've been in before, so we just kind of got to keep grinding it out.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people. A lot of our fans on Facebook are interested about what's going on with you, and so I finally figured better get you on the show and try to clear some stuff up. But there's probably a balance between picking a deal that's going to be best for you, but then also just staying on the track and staying active as a driver.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, there's the three main series: the NASCAR, the Truck Series, Xfinity, and the Cup Series. And while I'm definitely open to racing anything, I really want to stay in the Cup Series. I feel like that is very important to stay in those cars. Even if you gotta hunker down and maybe not drive the most competitive car, I feel like it's important to stay in that series and stay in front of the big team owners. And the big sponsors. So, that's definitely going to be a priority number one for me, is to stay in the Cup Series. And the other thing too is to make sure I'm working with good people. So, if I can align myself with a manufacturer some way, create some sort of work outside of that or in that realm, that'll help me be in front of good people. So that's the path that I'm going.
Well, and I also know just from being around the sport like I was, right now, unfortunately, I think the Truck Series is really in a bad way. You've had some teams closing up, and Brad's having to close his shop. Xfinity Series looks really strong right now, and so you got both ends of the spectrum, and the Cup Series is still the Cup Series where everybody wants to be. But if you're in a ride, like you said, it might not be what you think's the top level equipment, but if you're working with good people and take care of the equipment, that's one thing. It's not always just your performances. If you win 1 out of 5 races, you're going to get a good ride somewhere, even if you wreck the other 4. But if you're not winning every race almost, you just got to bring the equipment home in one piece, and the owners look at that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those are the kinds of things that you have to look at your situation and look at what your car is capable of and figure out what the best value add is for your team, but also for your own stock. So it'll be an interesting process. I got a lot of really faithful fans, especially back home in Iowa, that I really owe a lot to and for following me for so long. So I definitely that's a group of people that I don't want to let down.
But after watching the last half of the year, if a Toyota ride comes at you, take it. Take it.
According to Brad Keselowski, they have an unfair advantage.
Well, they won 17 races this year, Dan. 17. And they won 8 out of the 10 in the chase. Yeah, they're definitely the plus side on them right now.
They won half the races with half the cars.
Yep.
So that's they were definitely strong this year, but the tides definitely turn in this sport, and nothing stays the same forever.
Oh yeah, it's always gone in waves like that. Ever since I've been following it since the 70s, and you'll have several years where somebody's really good, a manufacturer, whether it be Ford, Chevy. Back through the Pontiacs and Oldsmobiles. And then the next thing you know, they, tweak it a little bit the other way to try and get somebody caught up. Well, we went too far. They just won all the races this year.
Yep.
So coming back
that's
around,
part of the politics.
Sorry, coming back around to the plans of 2018. If a ride doesn't come together for you, what are some of the other things that you'd be interested in? Because I personally think you would be fantastic in one of the booths for one of the broadcast partners.
Or even a pit road reporter.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be bad. I have some off-track stuff that I've been working on. Dale Jr. and I have been talking for some time now about working with him in Dirty Mo Radio and having some sort of a podcast with him. I've also have some other kind of content-driven opportunities with NASCAR that I've been exploring. So some really cool conversations with cool people, and I think that the next couple months are when I just have to sit down and balance my time and my opportunities and just set some priorities and figure out how I can put it all together and make it all happen in a 7-day work week.
Well, I agree with Dan. I think you'd be great, talking, whether it be radio or a podcast, like you say, because I did watch a lot of your Facebook stuff when you'd go live, whether at airports, grocery stores, you did a lot of different stuff, but I got to see a lot of those.
Yeah, I've enjoyed doing that. And, it's just, that stuff is fun and I feel like I'm good at it. I feel like, I always have a good message. I enjoy social media, but it's a lot of work, and you have to, if you want to commit to something like that, you got to make it a priority. What you guys do, running a radio show takes preparation, it takes time, and that has to be worth your while.
Hey, if Landon's calling at 3:00 today, get here at 2:30, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know what that preparation word is you're talking about, but maybe that's the reason why we're on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m.
The only preparation I see, he's got an H at the end of it.
Easy now, family show. And to your point, when you talked about when the news was announced that you wouldn't be returning to Front Row Racing, that, you do offer the teams and the sponsors a unique aspect because you are kind of in the mix of one of the veteran drivers, but yet you're handling social media the way that the younger rookie-style drivers are doing it. So you can offer a bridge to that gate, bridging that gap a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, and that I feel like that's definitely an asset of mine. That's something that I've earned that reputation, and it's opening doors for me. I mean, so it's just a matter of where it takes me, I guess.
Well, listen, we certainly enjoy seeing you out on the racetrack. Hopefully that streak doesn't end. We can see you out for the Daytona 500. But best of times in the off season. Try to relax a little bit, and please let us know as soon as you land anything.
Enjoy your holiday.
You got it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Landon. Have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
And again, Landon Cassill, formerly a native of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We would like to get him on the show every once in a while to get an update because until it was brought to my attention, I didn't realize it, but there are about 5 Iowa drivers in the NASCAR circuit right now between K&N and Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. So Iowa's well represented in the NASCAR circuit, and so we wanted to get an update on Landon. And like we talked about, such a well-spoken, smart guy. And, the big question I wanted to get answered, and I think I did, was would you do the Ryan Priece thing where you could have an opportunity at racing a full-time schedule, or you could pick up 4 or 5 rides at a top-tier organization? Ryan went with the option of a top-tier organization, and he's making that work for him. I think Landon kind of answered it for me. He would go with a middle to low-tier Cup Series team because he feels like being at the garage and in front of sponsors is the most important thing.
Well, and in the car. And,
yeah.
I think he takes some sponsorship with him. So he needs that sponsorship to be on the track every week. So,
absolutely.
yeah, he's got to look at that a little bit. But what I didn't want to say to him, and just my personal observation, and you can go ahead and reach across the room and tap me on the shoulder if I'm wrong.
Tap.
Yeah, there you go. But he, if you look at the Cup drivers that go back to the Xfinity series, it's kind of like the land of misfit toys. They don't very often make it back up there except for a hit and miss deal. Brendan Gaughan being one.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Allgaier, had a decent Cup career for several years, was never in the front but took care of equipment and whatnot. But now he's back. Elliott Sadler being another one. There's a handful of them.
Yeah,
So,
you're absolutely right. There's not a lot of those guys that bounce and come back, that make it their way down and come back up. Yeah, so you nailed it. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 4. We're going to announce the Legends of the Dirt Series for the 2017-2018 shows. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
We have all been there before. Broken car part in your hand and some snot-nosed punk behind the counter has no idea what he is talking about, but he guarantees that this part will fix your car. You pay an arm and a leg for the replacement, get it home, and sure enough, it doesn't fit your car. Now, learn from your mistake and give an experienced salesperson at Kosiski Auto Parts a call today at 402-731-4592. Kosiski Auto Parts will get you back on the road with your arms and legs still attached.
Fall has arrived, and so have the cold temperatures, but that doesn't mean you have to stay home. Get into Joe's Karting today and enjoy the Metro's largest fully heated indoor karting track. Get your friends together for a white-knuckle experience you can only find at Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Hours of operation, discounts, and lap times can be found online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Get to Joe's Karting today and discover Council Bluffs' best-kept secret, 23rd Avenue next to Mid-America Center.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Hey, this is Ryan Newman, driver of the number 31 Caterpillar Chevrolet, and you're listening to the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch, heading into turn number 4, just about ready to wrap this baby up. And it's time to talk about the Legends of the Dirt Series, presented by Kosiski Auto Parts. I want to say thanks to everybody over Kosiski Auto Parts for supporting the Legends of the Dirt Series and coming back on board to sponsor this segment. And I think it's important that we clear up that a legend isn't necessarily wins or championships or this kind of stuff. It's mostly contribution to the sport of dirt racing.
Well, that's a good portion of it, because you've got people in the Hall of Fame that never turned a lap.
Right.
Promoters, flagmen, whatever like that. So, you can be a legend, and it doesn't have to be at the top of the sport. Like one of the names we are going to go ahead and use this year is Mike Nichols. The guy has won a ton of races, a ton of championships. He has been the top in his division for a very long time.
Now we're going to go through the tentative list, and I'm going to say tentative because there's always one or two guys that we're not able to get a hold of in the offseason for one reason or another, and then maybe we'll record them and save them for the next year. But we have a plan of interviewing 13 drivers, and we have only 11 shows to do this in, but we may extend it to 12 and do another one a week before. The plan is the week before the Daytona 500, we're going to do a post or an off-season recap and to prepare you for the Daytona 500. We may scrap half that plan and then do the second half of the show as a legend. So this could be a very fluid thing. The good news is just listen to the show and you're going to be well informed as to what's going on.
And as you mentioned before, the Kosiski's coming back on board to sponsor this, and we had a little Kosiski representation at our party yesterday.
Absolutely. Andrew and his wife Kara came down, and Joe came down after going to the Knoxville Raceway awards banquet in Des Moines, and so we were glad to have him come down and watch the race. But let's kick off the list, and if you want to get a list, you can email us, and we'll send you an entire list. But if you missed any of our previous ones, we've been doing this Legends of the Dirt series since 2012, the first full year that the show was on the air, and we've got some amazing names on this list. Anywhere from Sammy Swindell, Todd Staley, Ed Sanger, Ken Schrader, John Gerloff, Ray Gus Jr. We've got some amazing Scott Bloomquist, Jonathan Davenport, Danny Wasowski, Bob Trossel. I mean, so amazing interviews that we have done in the off seasons that you can find all of them on YouTube and listen to the entire things. And we're going to post them. Well, I'll probably be posting a lot of them in the off season to get you ready for them. But the first name on the list isn't necessarily the most important or the one we're going to do first, but just happens to be the one that got the most votes, Kevin Gundaker.
Well, I met Kevin clear back, I'm going to say 80 or 81, and at that time he was a very dominant force in the world of dirt track racing. Did some racing up here in the area, out at Mid-Continent and up at Shelby County Speedway. He won a feature at Shelby County one night. It was a 50-lap feature, and I think he had almost the whole field lapped twice in 50 laps.
So we're going to try to talk to Kevin and get an interview about his career. Then next on the list is Glenn Roby. Easy. This was an easy one. Unanimous vote amongst the people that got together that night and
why did it take you guys so long?
Well, we interviewed him years ago as a part of the Dirt Track Roundtable. It was a group of legends we got through. Him, Dave Chase, Bob Kosiski, and there was one other Bill Rick. There was 4 guys we all sat down and had conversations with. So he's been on the show, but not as a dedicated guy. And so it was time to get him on as a dedicated legend. And then we have Jack Hodenschild, who his son, Sheldon, is racing right now. But Jack has been a big contributor to the dirt racing world over the years.
The Wild Child, definitely anybody that's a sprint car fan knows that name. And he had some real good runs at Eagle. I had a real neat T-shirt that I know I've still got one somewhere in the drawer that had, it was like his 25th anniversary T-shirt, had all 25 years of his race cars on the back of it. It was a pretty cool shirt.
Next on the list is a guy who has won 7 track championships at Eagle Raceway, and that's Mike Boston. And he's been absolutely dominant between the 360 class and the 305 class, just winning tons of championships.
And now I believe it's his son, Jordan, is also coming along, keeping the fire alive and winning some races.
Yep.
And but another open wheel guy.
And we tried to mix it up a little bit, tried to keep national, local, and regional, and then open wheel, modifieds, late models, that kind of stuff. So we kind of bounced around to try to cover a well-diverse group of guys.
And as we talked earlier, the next one's not necessarily for the racing accomplishments.
Right, absolutely. Roger Hayden, who nobody can deny what he's done at Eagle Raceway. Eagle Raceway's been a successful track for years, but while dirt racing has kind of been in a bit of a recession with ticket attendance and card counts, Roger's been the exception to that rule and had an incredibly successful weekly race, both attendance-wise and car count-wise.
Nobody comes anywhere close to his car counts on a weekly basis that I'm aware of, and I'm talking nationwide.
And also, I think he gets in, Stan Caesar was kind of giving some examples of why he believed he needed to be in, and I think what Roger is doing with the 305 series, that at Eagle Raceway for the weekly series, and then also doing the sprint series and Nebraska touring schedule, trying to expose some of these tracks to what the 305s can do, because the common misnomer is that, well, it's less horsepower, less engine, so it can't be that good of racing. Well, that's not necessarily the case. You get enough good drivers and you get the right track, and you can have a great series.
Yeah, I mean, and then he's got the 305 Nationals that come in Labor Day weekend for the 3-day show, and that's turning into quite the event, and 20-some-odd states this last year, I think, represented.
Yeah, it was crazy. It is crazy how many people showed up to that. Mike Nichols, like we talked about, is on this list, and probably the guy that should have been on the list a couple of years ago. And it kind of dawned on me, like, after he won the IMCA Super Nationals, I'm like,
finally,
okay, now we've got to do it. Now we've got to sit down and talk with him. Next on the list is Joe Saldana Sr., father of Joey Saldana, and a sprint car driver in his own rights.
Indy 500 racer. I mean, he did everything in the open wheel. I believe the Saldanas are originally out of Sedalia, Missouri, I think.
Well, I know that some of them reside in Lincoln right now.
Well, they spent a lot of time in Lincoln because they drove Speedway Motors rides and stuff, so they were up in the area. But I was thinking he was originally from Sedalia, but yeah, I mean, started out in a sprint car, went up and, was driving Indy cars and everything like that.
Next on the list is a guy that we've already done once, but we've gone back and done these a couple of times when they've continued to accomplish things. We may throw Scott Bloomquist on the list for a third time in a couple of years if he continues to win Lucas Oil late model championships and continues to do this. But the next guy on the list, Kyle Burke, continues to win Malvern Banks Super Late Model Championships. Missed it this year with Tad Pospischal winning it, but he's had 5 championships. He wins track championships, continues to win. He's an incredibly dominant driver in the late model class.
And that's exactly where he's always been. I mean, he does a little modified racing. He dabbles here and there. But he started out this year behind the 8 ball with the big trailer fire right at the opening SLMR race up in Denison. And but came back and was very competitive. And, I'm sure as long as he stays behind the wheel and has his sister calling the shots for him. Belinda keeps him up front. They're very dedicated and tough racers.
Next on the list, Daryl DeFrance. I've never met him, and I know very little about him, so take this one over.
Well, I met Daryl when I used to work some Busch All-Star races, but he's from over in the Marshalltown, Iowa area. I think he has made every start, if I'm not mistaken, on the Deary Brothers Late Model Series. I don't think he's ever won the whole series. I know he's won some features. Won many track championships, Webster City, Marshalltown, in that central Iowa area. But again, nicknamed the Iron Man because he's always there.
Next on the list, Tom Hurst.
First NASCAR Weekly Racing Series champion. Now, we wanted to get Tom last year, and we I found phone numbers for him and contact info, but never did actually get a hold of him, and so we're working on it again this year.
Some of these old guys are difficult to get a hold of, so that's why we say these are the planned ones, and it may be tentative.
And some of them are snowbirds, so they get to Arizona or Texas or whatever for the winter and stuff like that, and they just don't want to deal with it then when they're down there. So we're working on it, but Tom Hurst would be another one. I mean, that was back when the weekly racing series is you had to go out and win features. It wasn't your local track where you got your first 16 nights scored.
Yeah.
He won like 60 features or something, or 50 out of 60. It was something crazy. He was running 3, 4, 5 nights a week, anywhere from Arizona to Indianapolis, Ohio. I mean, all over the place trying to get those wins.
Next up is Rick Auckland.
Another big late model racer back, it was in the 90s. I don't remember. I want to say 96, maybe 97, something like that. Rick won the Havatampa race at I-80 Speedway. Was the kind of the first big late model race that showed up, and but he won that and was very dominant there in the late 90s. I believe he's originally out of South Dakota, I think. Might be North Dakota, but a Midwest guy.
We'll find out in a couple of weeks when we talk to him for the Legend of the Dirt series. Now we go back to the open wheels and the big wings. A sprint car guy, Terry McCarl, who has won a lot in this area. He's raced a lot at Knoxville and won a lot at Knoxville. Has the charity that goes on every year for the 410 Nationals. I believe it's the Front Row Challenge at Oski.
Yeah, real good ambassador for the sport.
Should say he's got a little bit of a temper on him, but that's passion, and we've seen him get very frustrated with the driver, and he's trying to continue on that family legacy with his two sons racing. Austin is one of them. I can't remember the other one's name, but Austin McCarl is currently racing, and he's got another boy that's racing. But the final one on the list, so Terry McCarl is on there, and then the final one on the list, his son is absolutely tearing up the dirt late model world with Bobby Pierce, and we're going to talk to Bob Sr.
Yeah, and if Junior has another couple of years like he's had the last few, we'll be talking to him for this deal before too long. But Bob Sr., if I'm not mistaken, ran second at the World 100 an unprecedented 5 times, I think is what it is. And I mean, that's just, when you think about being that close that many times, I mean, we got introduced to Bob at Knoxville a year ago when we interviewed Bob Jr. Again, a very accomplished racer, ran the number 32 just like Junior's doing.
That's our list for 2017, 2018. If you missed any part of it, we're going to get it back up on YouTube, and we'll post it on the Front Stretch Facebook page in the coming days. Can't say a thank you enough to everybody that supports the Front Stretch with sponsors and fans and drivers and promoters and owners. We've got the off season we're going to be working on right now, and Dirk and I have got some plans in the future for next year with some of the changes we want to make to the show. But say thank you to Rick Havenbridge for supporting all the Pick'ems contest. Thank you to Quaker Steak and Lube for offering us prizes and a location to go down to for the viewing parties, which by the way will be the Daytona 500 again. And a big thank you to all the Pick'ems contestants that participated. There was over 70 people that signed up for the season long, and we've had a lot of them that come on board here in just the last year or two. And I mean, we had our Crewman for a Day for Matt Tift winners showed up yesterday. I know some people that I went to high school with that came out, was their first year in the Pick'ems contest, but came out and had a good time with us yesterday. Of course, then we've got our old faithfuls that, show up at every one of these deals and have a good time. Yeah. We don't know how they can continue to do that. We got to get a nickname for them because every fan group's got a nice little nickname. We got to find something. The Frontenatics. I like that. You may have just done it. Perfectly done, buddy. We're going to take off the weekend. We'll come back next weekend. I hope everybody enjoyed their Thanksgiving. We'll come back next weekend. Gunnar Pike is the man on the list to get interviewed. And we're also going to talk with Ben Shelton to preview the Gateway Dirt Nationals. And Ian Madsen is going to join us on the show. We'd originally planned to have Ian on today, but unfortunately scheduling conflicts got in the way. And we Holiday kind of screwed us up this week. Yeah, I didn't see it coming, but it's here now. So I hope everyone enjoyed their Thanksgiving and their weekend recovering from. We'll be back again to do it all again next weekend here on the Front Stretch.
Have you ever watched NASCAR, dirt track, or IndyCar and thought, I could do that? Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs is the place to put your money where your mouth is. Races fire off every 10 minutes, so what are you waiting for? Get to Joe's Karting on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs, next to the Mid-America Center, and find out how easy it is to drive a race car. Each Joe's Karting car is powered by an eco-friendly Honda engine capable of a 14-second lap. That's if you're as good as you think.
The official watering hole of the Front Stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
Any driver will tell you that the key to winning a race is preventive maintenance. Pat at Eccles Heating and Air can make sure your wallet is on the winning side with a preventive care package. Pat will look over your existing unit and make recommendations to make sure you're toasty warm this winter. Drivers trust Pat at the racetrack with their safety, so you know you can trust him with your home heating. Call Pat today at 402-331-1755 and schedule your heater checkup. Eccles Heating and Air.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.